how to hold your team accountable without micromanaging. The primary difference between accountability and micromanagement is really one thing. That's a documented, accountable process. Usually you're not micromanaging because you're a controlling person. I feel better. No. You're still micromanaging, but it's a different purpose. It's because your team has no clarity. By the end of this video, you're gonna know how to hold your team accountable without hovering over every decision like a pigpen's cloud of dust around people. We had a client that when we started working with them, we encourage our clients to bring their key leaders in, and we'll start to talk with their key leaders, and we'll ask permission of the client, hey, do you mind if we get pretty invasive with the key leaders to understand their working environment and all those sorts of things? And so we started talking with the key leaders. We're like, how satisfied are you in the work? All the general questions. And what we got back was a pretty significant dissatisfaction in the work, but they were busy. And so when we kind of aggregated all the data, we realized what was going on. The owner was the central nervous system to the entire business, telling everybody what to do, when to do it, how to do it over and over and over again. So all the team members just got to doing and just stopped thinking. They didn't have to think anymore. Well, you can tell where that's going to lead over time. We're human beings. We like to sort of deploy our creative energies within our mind to be able to think independently and think uniquely about some of the things that we're doing. Because over time, if all we are is robots, then we'll just move on to the next thing. Well, what ended up happening, the owner started to realize this based on the feedback, and to his credit, was able to start to pivot and begin delegating a lot of these things without this idea of micromanagement. And so I'm going to walk you exactly through how he did that. But before we get started, I want to help you to understand micromanagement. There is a huge myth around this idea of micromanagement. What I'm not talking about is healthy leadership. Healthy leadership can actually be misdiagnosed for micromanagement because, especially in our culture, we've grown a little softer as it relates to leadership. And so when somebody gives us feedback or pushback on a thing, we equate that to micromanagement when in reality, what that may actually be is a tool of maturation. And we have to be really, really careful about that. So here's what I want to do to help you to understand the difference between micromanagement and healthy leadership. We call this the seesaw of predictability. What do I mean by that? All right, just imagine a seesaw. Listen, I've already said pigpen, so I've got like a decades old reference here. So now let's go to that back to the playground of your youth. And the old seesaw that's out there, the one that if you put your finger accidentally in the middle, it just pinched it right off, that one. So you've got two sides of the seesaw with a fulcrum in the middle. Now I want you to think of micromanagement this way. On the right side, you have a question mark sitting on the chair of that seesaw. On the left side, you have a clock sitting on the chair of that seesaw. And on this side is represented as the right question at the right time. Now, if you ask the wrong question at the right time, the seesaw is out of balance. If you ask the right question, but at the wrong time, the seesaw is out of balance. What do I mean by that? All right, let's run some examples. So let's say that you're about to have a sales meeting and you come in and everybody's in the sales meeting and you say, hey, I need sales reports from 12 years ago. They're going to look at you and be like, Now, you asked the wrong question, sales reports from 12 years ago. Nobody was expecting that. Catches them totally off guard, but you did it at the right time. You're like, we're in a sales meeting. Like I should be able to ask that question. Yes. You were in the sales meeting, but you asked the wrong question. Now, flip that. You asked this question. Hey, I need last week's sales reports. That's a good question, right? But you texted a member of your team at 11:37 on a Friday evening. Wrong time. So you asked the right question at the wrong time. That's out of balance. That's micromanagement. At the moment, that's why we call it the seesaw of predictability, is you have created unpredictability. Unpredictability is the main ingredient in micromanagement. When somebody feels micromanaged, it feels that way because it's unpredictable. But here's the difference. Here's what healthy leadership looks like. You're in a sales meeting, first week of the next month. You've told every member of your team that we review prior month's reporting details on the first week of the following month. So all details are due by last Friday. And guess what? Somebody doesn't input their details by last Friday. It is healthy leadership to go back to them and say, hey, you did not report your details by last Friday. We've got to do something about that. And holding them accountable to that, that is healthy leadership. That is not micromanagement. And so I want you to understand the difference through the seesaw of predictability of what the difference is between healthy leadership and micromanagement. All right? So now, if you were a psychologist or maybe a physician, you would start to name micromanagement not so much as the fire, but as the smoke. It's not the actual fracture. It's the symptom of the fracture. It's somebody going, ow. But underlying under all of that, they've actually got a fracture that needs to be solved. So too many times what we try to do is when we feel micromanaging, we try to solve the micromanaginess, the emotional component around it, without actually solving the fire that's underneath. And so the fire that may be underneath, and is most likely underneath, is a lack of documented, trained, and accountable process. You may want to write those 3 words down: documented, trained, and accountable processes. Because we could document the process but not train it, and if we don't train it, we can't hold it accountable. We could train the process without documentation, but it's hard to hold it accountable if it's not in written form or recorded form. We could hold people accountable to a process that is captive in our head. We call that a captive process because it's locked behind the bars of your own head and nobody else can get access to it. If you ever want to grow a team, or if you ever want to exit or transition your business, then you're going to have to take those processes that are held captive and liberate them and free them so that other people can get access to them. Yes, you are going to risk that somebody does not do the process the way you do the process. But we also have to get over our ego around that a little bit. So I want to give you 3 landing spots where usually micromanagement is brewed out of. This is sort of the culture spot that micromanagement is best delivered, all right? Now, I want you to understand, we're not going for this, but when you have a lack of an org chart, so people don't know where they fit in the organization, you have a lack of a job role, they don't know what they're being asked to do, and you have a lack of a scorecard, so they don't know what to do and when to do it, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, etc., whatever the recurringness of that thing is. When you don't have those 3 elements, that is a perfect breeding ground for micromanagement. Why? It's because you as the owner are going to step in to every single one of those situations to make sure they're done right. But instead, when you have a proper org chart, when you have a proper job role, set expectations for the process the person's supposed to be doing, and you have a proper scorecard, and that creates the accountability recurrence around those particular tasks, now you have the fertile breeding ground for healthy leadership or accountability at that point. So I want to ask you the question. Do you have an org chart? Is it updated? Have you shared it with the team? Have people seen the role that they fill? We don't need people's names on them. In fact, we have a rule with our org chart. We call it role first, people agnostic. We really don't care about the names of the people. We want to know the names of the roles. So do we have those roles mapped out in the 4 core systems of every business? Marketing, sales, ops, and admin. There are a lot of org charts we've seen, and it looks like a spider web of just names and people. Why? Is because we're trying to make people happy. We don't want to make them feel like they're low man on the totem pole. So we elevate them and dotted line them and do all kind of stuff. No. There's 4 systems in a business. Everybody fits within those 4. Marketing, sales, ops, and admin. Where are these roles in those 4 systems? And then once the roles are identified and named, then what are the actual role tasks? That's what makes up a job role. And then once those tasks are identified, or the processes, then we can get those processes and boil them down into a scorecard. Now, where does the accountability hit? It makes me think of the 2 oceans, the Atlantic and the Indian, when they come together. So we've got the org charts, the job roles, the scorecards over here in this ocean, but then we've got you, the leader, over here in this ocean, and at some point these need to come together. And we want to try to have them come together without the big whoosh, right? We want to kind of make it natural. So how do we do that? With what we call a one-on-one check-in. Super simple. At least twice a month, I want you meeting with each of your direct reports. Just your direct reports, not everybody in the company. And you're like, well, everybody in the company is my direct report. Then we got another problem. We need to start delegating at that point, all right? You want to delegate responsibility. We have a team of 12 at the time of this recording. I have 3 other people that I have delegated to be able to run the rest of the team because I can't do that. So I spend the majority of my time with those 3 people to be able to do that because I can't do that. There was an Old Testament story, actually, Moses. You probably heard of Moses. And there was a time with his group of people, at which time there were millions of people in this traveling group that was going together. And they were leaving Egypt and they were heading into this new land. And Moses' father-in-law came in one day, traveled in from out of town, said, hey man, can I come to work with you today? Moses was like, yeah, come on in. So Moses goes to work. And he's spending his whole day basically as a solo judge of the people. And he's helping negotiate deals with people. He's essentially a judge on a bench. And his father-in-law comes to him at the end of the day and goes, this is nuts. You're the only person doing this for all of these people? Moses was like, yeah, I'm the guy. I got to do it. And so his father-in-law said, hey, listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to find, I think it was 50 or 150 other people, and I want you to delegate and deputize them to be able to give some of this authority to other people. For some of you as a business owner, you're in that same seat. You're trying to run all these people yourself where you need to start deputizing them. And so your delegation, org chart, job role, scorecard is going to start with 1 or 2 or 3 people, and then you'll scale from there. You'll start doing your one-on-one check-ins with them. Let me tell you what to talk about in this check-ins. Number 1, you're going to talk about big wins. Give me a big win from the last week. And the big stands for begin in gratitude. We got that from a guy named Dan Sullivan. And it'll take you about 30 seconds. Then you're going to dive into your role scorecard. You're just going to review it and go, hey, let's look down your scorecard. Any questions you had? Here's a couple of thoughts that I had about that, and make sure that accountability is happening. And then you're just going to ask a couple of simple questions. What are you seeing right now? Just general. Get them to talk back to you. What are blind spots that we might have right now? What do you need from me right now? And then this is a key one in your one-on-one check-in. Here's what I need from you. This is your opportunity to be able to come back from them. This is not micromanagement, because the expectation is that you're going to meet like this twice a month. And so there's nothing out of the ordinary. It's the right time and the right questions because you have an agenda and you have a slot to be able to meet. So if you want to start holding your team accountable without micromanaging, without doing all of these other things, then we need to create clear articulation as to where a person fits, what's expected of them, and what the recurrence of that expectation is. Then you need to come in as a leader and have a one-on-one check-in with them where you ask them a set defined number of questions over about a 15 to 20 minute period at minimum of twice a month. And at that point, there's your accountability. And it's all without that unpredictable seesaw of micromanagement. I want to draw your attention to a link in the description below. I've got a powerful video where I will help you train new employees, even if they're not new. It'll help you walk through how to elevate the right people in the right tasks. We've created a custom handbook along with this powerful training video. So go click on the link in the description below. You keep micromanaging, you're going to keep living in chaos. Our mission is not that. We want to liberate you from chaos to make time for the things that matter most.